My name is Terrence Mancal. This is my class of Stock Refinishing and Metal Lab Work, or Metal Work Lab. This is my week 1 project build from continuing from the woodworking class. We're going to start off with sanding the stock, resanding the stock for staining. This is the part, here's the stock right before I do the final sanding for the stain. I'm using a Honey Grit 100 grit standing sponge on it. Yeah, I'm also using gloves so I don't get no splinters, and also my oils for my hand don't get into the wood as I'm doing the finishing. Well, after I'm done doing the sanding, I wipe it down with a wet cloth. Then I, with a little bit at a time, also applied a little bit of heat to dry it. Also to lift up any wood that there was any nicks or dings in it, so I can stain it properly. As you see, I'm doing parts of it at a time, not rush through it. Make sure. Now here's the final part where I'm getting ready to stain. I'm try to use that big sponge brush, but it was too big to fit in. So I'm using the small one, as you see there. I'm applying over at the butt end of the stock first, all the way through, single strokes, as best I can. Make sure I cover everything. I'm catching it inside the inlets where I need to, where the brass will show or seat in. I'm also doing the locking mechanism as well too. This is the first coat. After I am done staining the full deal, see I'm getting inside, I'll be letting it sit for 15 minutes. On the can it says 5 to 15 minutes, so I'm doing the max 15. And then I will be going on to a second coat of stain. Here it is after 15 minutes that I applied the first layer of stain. I'm going to wipe it down first, get any excess stain off of it before I restain it again with another coat. As you see here, wipe it down each part, as you see, to make sure I can get everything. So I have a nice even coat on every single time I recoat the wood. There I go. I'm not using very much stain. I'm single stroke, making sure I get every part. And this also helps make sure that whatever parts I did miss, it covers it as well. Not the first time's not always perfect, so that's why I'm doing a second coat. I do a total of 3 coats for this whole tire. And see, being very careful. I'm always using gloves because I don't want to get the oils from my hands in with the stain. I don't want to stain my hands. Here's the third set. Getting ready to do the third set. I'm going to be wiping it down yet again to make sure any excess is off of there, so it'll be a nice even coat, catching every bit of spots that I brushed with. And again, even one stroke, kind of overlap them just to make sure I covered that area. As I'm going through, I'm making sure I caught every single area this time. Yet again, I'm going to let this sit for 15 minutes. And then after 15 minutes, I'm going to be wiping it down again. On this part, I forgot to catch the bottom of the buttstock, so that's what I was doing on that part. Now here's the, after the third coat of stain. Now what I'm going to do, I didn't have any sealer, or I couldn't find any sealer either, so I use a high gloss or clear gloss to coat around to seal, hopefully to seal in the wood. As you see, nice even sprays. I didn't shoot it down for too long and that way I can make sure nice even coats of this. Now I got to the end, I kind of had to grab onto the wood stock and see me try coat over where I touched at. Also use the brush to take off any high spots of the gloss, so it'll be nice and even. Just making sure I got everything in nice even strokes again. Trying to be very careful how I touch it, where I touch it, so I don't mess up on the wood and on the gloss. I'm gonna let it go hang it up, let it cure over for 24 hours. Now here's the ramrod. I'm gonna use the sand it down. Once I'm done sanding it down and also staining it, as you see, nice smooth strokes where I'm paying attention exactly where and how well the wood is sanding. I'm making sure I'm also not sanding it down too much. Now here I'm going to be using the gunstock oil and the first set of stain, or not oil, finish, and then I'm going to use start coating it in the first set of stain. I try to do nice even strokes on the ramrod since it's so small, and overlap each stroke I do, so make sure I cover every single part, as you see right there. And then I'm going to let it cure for 5 minutes. So now here's after the first set of stain. I'm going to wipe it down like I did with the stock, and then I'm going to re-stain it. Here you'll see I'm wiping it down, making sure I get all excess stain. Now I'm going to go over it just like how I did with the first set, overlap each stroke, so make sure I get every single part since it is a small area. And then I'm going to let it cure yet again for 5 minutes. Now here's the third time going to stain the ramrod. I'm going to wipe it down first again, and then I'm going to brush down with overlapping strokes to make sure I cover every single area again, while also making sure I don't cover the brass. As you see me being careful right there, touching right exactly where the wood and the ramrod, or where the wood and the brass meet. Now here is after the third time, I'm going to wipe it down, then I'm going to use the same clear coat gloss I have on the ramrod. I'm going to make sure, there you see me making sure I close off it so I don't mix by accident. Short strokes, and then also make sure now I'm going to let that cure for 24 hours as well too. Touch it up with the brush to make sure there's no high spots, because I saw some drippage and I didn't want any high spots on the ramrod because it wouldn't fit. Now here's the brass from the build. The red pad or green pad you see there, that is an 80 grit sandpaper. The orange is 120 and the yellow is 220 grit. The black sponge you see in the background is a 100 grit sand sponge. I'm going to be using that as well too. They also have Brasso. Use Brasso to wipe down and polish the brass pieces. Used to that from a dad that was in the military, me being JROTC, how to use Brasso on brass. So I figured it'll be a nice good polish of the pieces. Now you see me going with the green sponge, green pad. That's scraping it down, sanding it down to make sure I can get a nice even layer. And then switching it to the 100 grit to make sure I cover every single piece over, try to get it a little bit more nice and smooth. Then with the 120 grit, and then as soon as I like it, doing it with the 120 or 220 grit sandpaper. I'm going to keep doing this over with all the other brass tools. This was the most on this week build. I also used a little soft grinding or soft wheel to see maybe I can get a little bit more of a polish off of it. Alright, here's me using brush on the first piece. You see, trying to get all nice and clean. You see evidence on the rag that it was getting all the metal and whatever grime and anything else on it to try and make it look a lot better. This was one of the most hardest part of this week's project, because during this whole entire process of sanding and polishing the brass, kind of really hurt my hands because it's so small pieces, but I was able to do this with no problem. But some of them I didn't really need to go through all out of the sanding papers, but there's some I did have to go through all. But that was really much the only challenge I had with this build, was the brass components, because how small they were. But end up still taking my time, make sure I can do all of these pieces. But it took some time to make sure it looks really good, the best that I could do it with what I had. I didn't really have much, but I did what I could. The one that really took the longest was the butt plate. Trying to get that nice and smooth, because I did put some little nicks and dings while trying to shape it from the last class. So they're spending a lot more time on the butt plate than any other pieces. That was the biggest one. But in the end, I got all the pieces done to my liking, and hopefully by the end of this 4-week class I can have a nice looking muzzleloader at the end of it. Other, I wouldn't say difficult, but frustrating part was from this week's project was not having all the right stuff and trying to look for it, and then other things happen. But I worked with what I got, and I like the final portion of the stock and the ramrod. It turned out great to my liking. Just waiting on it to cure to make sure I got it nice and even. But this is my first week's project, and I hope you enjoyed it.